Yes, my friends, this week has been absolutely crazy, with this epic static fire being the most powerful rocket test ever. After months of waiting, repairs, and all the upgrades around Pad 2, SpaceX finally unleashed the Fury, and wow, was this something. The thing is, with a little hiccup that followed, are we still looking at Starship Flight 12 coming over this next week? Well, indeed, we have a lot to catch up on. With that, we have plenty more Falcon 9 action and Starlink views like this. We have loads more updates from Blue Origin and Artemis news that will also blow your mind. Yet again, it is another frantic week.
Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
Hey, Marcus House with you here, and of course, we've been eagerly awaiting any news on Flight 12, and through the week, I am very happy to say that so far, the mid-May launch date looks to be holding fairly steady, with documents to the local mariners and airmen in both the US and Mexico being published starting on May 15 right through to May 21st. These have windows that open up at 5:30 PM and then extend up to 7:43 PM Starbase time. So yeah, a little over 2 hours for those windows, which gives a little flexibility when it comes to weather or technical issues. Now that is pushed a few days from the earliest opportunity that we had seen a week ago, but to begin preparing for the first ever version 3 Starship to fly from the brand new Pad 2, SpaceX started the week off very strong. Well, perhaps a little too strong. They were gearing up for a full water deluge rehearsal last weekend. Both the ridge and buckets roared to life first, and then the top deck kicked in, displaying its enormous power once again. But what happened there? We could see some flying debris accompanied by a reasonably violent-looking depress here. This was within the deluge farm where the gasifiers are housed, and lo and behold, RGV aerial photography was able to capture a shot of the aftermath. Clearly, one of these 3 gasifiers had failed, let's say enthusiastically blowing off the roof panels and bending these steel bars. The pressures that they are dealing with here are quite something. There was a little panic by the space community after this event, and many people were thinking that this may have caused some sizable damage to the system, but SpaceX are always ready to kick into action with these sorts of mishaps. They already had a replacement gasifier on site by the time of this flight, and were preparing to swap it out. If it had caused any delay at all, it didn't seem to be by a lot. SpaceX, as always, made quick work of that repair because the buckets were being tested a couple of times on Tuesday. Now, as I talked about in the past few videos, SpaceX mentioned in their new documentary that both static fires of Booster 19 were cut short due to issues with the deluge system. Because of that, it seemed fairly certain that we would see the Super Heavy needing to perform another one. Well, just like that, there was the booster transport stand rolling into Mega Bay 1, followed by testing closures appearing. Before we knew it, the booster was already on the transport stand and rolling out on Tuesday evening. Now this is really cool. Right away, we noticed this one upgrade staring us in the face. Indeed, Booster 19 has a neat coat of paint or thermal coating around the base here, just like we've seen in previous renders by SpaceX. It's certainly the most awesome looking Super Heavy that we have seen so far. One change that wasn't included in the renders though are these spherical aerodynamic shrouds that cover the lip on the edge of the engine's interface and the small autogenous pipe coming out of the top. We could just see this during the lift given it was done at night, but thankfully Chameleon Circuit was geared up to help us give you a better idea of what it should all look like. I certainly can't wait to see how it all appears taking off. So yeah, with Booster 19 back at the pad, they kicked off on Wednesday with what seemed to just be a simple pressure test. They then came right back on Thursday though, filling Super Heavy with propellant, appearing to be going for a full static fire again to prove that they had fixed the deluge issue, with the initial one being aborted before even making it 2 seconds in. Well, the deluge fired up, and take a look at this. Wow, they finally did it. All 33 engines lit up for full duration and at full thrust. That, by the way, is unlike any previous tests using a booster at Pad 1. SpaceX, I believe, maxed those tests out at only 50% throttle. Based on what we know about the target liftoff thrust for the version 3 Super Heavy, we can assume that this was up above a staggering 8,000 tons of thrust. That, by the way, is not only the highest thrust that SpaceX has ever had on a rocket, but this is also easily the most powerful rocket thrust ever. It comfortably beats SpaceX's own previous record with Starship version 1 and 2, and goodness, just look at those shockwaves. The sheer power on display here is staggering, ridiculous. I don't know, you find the best word for it, but honestly, it blows my mind that the materials used in the pad and Starship can withstand this brutal punishment involved. Somewhere around 8,000 tons of fiery fury just belting down, which all needs to be absorbed and or redirected away. Seeing the huge plume of flame erupting in just two directions is, well, it's just bananas. Anyway, yes, this deluge system looked to be cooperating nicely this time, which allowed not just the most powerful demonstration ever, but also this was SpaceX's longest ever super heavy static fire. Now, I've just got to shout out the avid space crew too, because check this out. Sean had picked up a few images of their vehicle. This is the Rover 3 remote vehicle, and as it turned out, it wasn't in the most ideal position. Windows blown out there, and you can even see from the tyres that the entire vehicle had been shoved over. As always, of course, thanks for being subscribed here, watching along, we appreciate you, but given that the Rover 3 vehicle needed it to be towed away, a huge thanks to everybody that supports their work. If you can, I bet that they could really use a few donations right now to get everything fixed back up. Anyway, the next step for SpaceX in this process, we assumed, would be the full stack. In the aftermath of that epic test, they extended the ship quick disconnect and lowered the tower arms ready to receive Ship 39. However, it seemed they hit a slight snag there. As the day came to an end, the tower arms had been fully lowered to the resting stop and multiple cranes swarmed around the arm. In the darkness, we could just make out that they had removed one of the skates that assist the arms with moving up and down the tower. Not to fear though, because they got that quickly replaced and Ship 39 was just hours ago rolling into the launch site to be lifted and stacked together with Booster 19. That's a first for this new launch pad and the new version 3 vehicles as well, of course. At the time of uploading this video, there was a testing closure for this afternoon on Saturday, so do be sure to keep your eyes on the cameras for a potential wet dress rehearsal coming. With this, they should fill the entire vehicle with propellant and then run a simulated launch sequence right down through the count to the expected T0. They should do everything in this sequence except, of course, igniting the engines. Now, while we are here at the launch site, it is worth mentioning that the Pad 1 trench excavation work has begun and the commodities bunker is going vertical on this pre-assembly jib nearby. SpaceX didn't do this for the previous pads, but they seem to have found a way to begin constructing a large portion of the pad without having to wait on groundwork to finish. This is a good thing because with the sheer amount of launch pads SpaceX is planning to construct, it makes sense to look at the longer lead times and try to optimize where possible. Chrome Kiwi has made another awesome render showing how it should all come together. We will need to wait and see how far they get into the outfitting or if they will simply just assemble the steel truss structure. So from this vantage point, we can see all those small methane tanks that were removed last week have freed up a bunch of space for the new tank farm expansion to come. This likely opens up an area where they can add in more liquid oxygen and liquid nitrogen storage. The two other old methane tanks are being kept around for a little while longer, but they have been moved right next to the other 4 storage tanks close by. One had moved during the flyover and the second beside it not long after. It is just a small move, but that may be freeing up this spot for more liquid methane storage. You've got to remember that with SpaceX's huge future flight frequency goals, it's going to make a lot of sense to be able to load 2 full Starship stacks without having to replenish the tank farm much, if at all. Okay, so up the road at the Sanchez area of the production site, there are now multiple sections of the Pad 1 orbital launch mount stacking up. These are part of the second layer that make up the launch mount, so they're not going to be needed for quite some time. We're still on the lookout for some of those that make up the lower section before they can really start that assembly. Also very interesting are these parts here. Now, given that we know SpaceX are going to be shipping future super heavy boosters and Starships to Florida, we've been keeping our eyes out for hardware that would allow the stated horizontal transportation. Well, we've got nice confirmation from all these items here labelled booster horizontal aft frame and horizontal transport stand. Of course, right through the Starship program, we have never seen a vehicle laying down, so this will be quite a sight. It makes total sense that we would see SpaceX start off with the booster first too. It is much bigger, but also it makes way more sense to test the larger vehicle with the new tank farm systems at 39A first. Just like at Starbase in Texas, they need to fully test and verify that it all works exactly as planned. There's just so much happening everywhere, and trying to keep track of it all can be, let's say, a tricky job, and there's plenty more around Starbase to cover too. Running a business with a team can leave you with deadlines appearing, communications getting missed or buried, and tasks just being forgotten. Well, that's where Odoo's Project app is a game changer. Right here you have a terrific all-in-one business management solution. Their Project app gives you brilliant insight of what tasks are most important. It is simple to get started. Pop in a new project in no time, throw in the stages involved, and hand off tasks to whoever is best for each job. You can set deadlines for each milestone along with the priority so that the most important stuff is being done first, and that alone has it all moving through the pipeline smoothly. You can add tables, images, videos, and checklists, and if something needs adjusting, you can easily split tasks into more manageable chunks. I think it is just so handy having everything integrated, and you can use it for communications too, so everything is organised right here. That includes email chains where you can tag your team members, attach files, and add in any notes. It's great because you're not bouncing around 5 different applications. All of your reminders are here too. You add in the team's to-do items, upcoming calls, meetings, or any other reminder. When a project is set up, you'll love the instantly available perspectives to oversee everything. Kanban is awesome for dragging tasks around like sticky notes to tweak how everything is flowing. You have the Gantt view there to check on timelines to see if you have any overlaps, and the list view for just checking out a heap of stuff all at once. The great thing is, with this deal you can get signed up and run your projects for free because Odoo's first app is free for life, which also includes unlimited hosting and support. When you need more from your business, you can access all 70 plus Odoo apps, from CRM to sales, invoicing, e-commerce, and so much more. Check it out by following the link below to get started. Thank you, Odoo. Okay, so back to Starbase. Close by, we can see the assembly of another Starship pairs Starlink loader beginning. We believe Starship should be able to handle a total of about 60 satellites per launch, but the other loader that we have seen up to this point can only handle about 30. Given this is only roughly half the loaded amount, it would make total sense to fill up 2 separate loaders of 30 so that they don't need to wait for 2 separate sets to roll in. It's all about optimizing those processes. Now, exactly a week ago, right as our video was uploading to go live, SpaceX had the new ship thrust simulator stand rolling out of Mega Bay 2 with a new passenger. Yes, this is Ship 40 being planned for Flight 13, and we could see, just like Ship 39, that it was once again subject to quite a few tile testing blocks on the leeward side of the ship. This time though, SpaceX mainly seems to be focused on the welded seams between the rings to test what method of tile adhesion and layout works best. Even though it's not fully complete yet, this ship looks great already. When it arrived at Massey's, it was immediately parked over the flame trench all ready to kick off its testing. The flaps were extended and also hooked up to this testing hardware, so it seems that all of this extra flap testing is becoming a standard operating procedure here now. Interestingly, some changes have been made since Ship 39 was out here for flap testing. We now see that the forward flap pulley system has been swapped out for actuators, which certainly seems easier to use. In no time, Ship 40 was kicking off its cryogenic proofing run, but sadly we don't have much of an angle here to see much detail in the frost climbing. In just one night, they performed 2 separate loading campaigns. Amazingly, that was it. They were done. Thankfully, in daylight hours on Wednesday, it was rolling back to the production site to get ready for the next step, which we certainly hope will be its static fire. Now, along with that ship, Ship 41, presumably targeting Flight 14, is also coming along quite nicely, by the way. The 2 barrels making up the majority of the liquid oxygen tank have now been rolled into the bay. A neat view here of the second one as it was heading over to the turntable to be welded onto the rest of the vehicle. The next step will be for SpaceX to install the propellant transfer tubes. In parallel, they've also lifted both of the aft flaps close to the middle workstation ready to be installed there, just like we saw them do with Ship 40. I tell you, this week has really been all action. Its partner, Booster 21, rapidly started stacking this week too. The first section of the liquid oxygen tank rolled in, followed by its common dome. That's really impressive given that it was only last week that Booster 20 before it completed its stacking. I dare say it's going to start getting harder to know which booster goes with which ship soon. That's because hopefully one of these existing boosters being worked on will be flying multiple times at some some point. With any luck, soon an upper stage Starship as well. Anyway, for now, all eyes are just watching the lead up to Flight 12, so I won't get too ahead of myself. I just think it's so incredible that we are watching this magic. As a side note, Rocket Lab published their own sweet engine exhaust footage. This awesome plume comes from their Archimedes engine being tested at NASA's Stennis Space Center for their Neutron rocket. You've just got to love that methane oxygen exhaust. This test site was damaged following an anomaly late last year, so it's great to see everything back up and running. Rocket Lab is clearly ramping things up as they approach the first flight test. They're doing all sorts of engine testing here now, including full duration burns, thrust vector control motion tests, and vacuum engine hot fires. It's all happening. We have another interesting week for SpaceX with Falcon 9 as well. They were back with another mission launching bang on midnight on Sunday morning from Vandenberg Space Force Base. For this one, they were sending 45 satellites into orbit in another sweet rideshare mission. It was booster 1071 on its 33rd flight, and this puts it just one behind the record holder. It was another brilliant return to launch site mission 2, and there it was returning to touchdown at landing zone 4. We were soon at deployment time, of course, and it was South Korea's CAS-500 2 Earth observation satellite leading the stack. That was deployed into a sun-synchronous orbit about an hour after launch, but that was just the beginning. Over the next 2 deployment sequences, dozens of additional satellites, CubeSats, microsats, and multiple Earth observation satellites from international customers were released here. Alongside that mission, we had some typical Starlink action, including this magic. I'll come right back to that, but we just had the one single Starlink mission for the week, with Group 1729 launching this batch of 24 satellites into orbit on Tuesday evening. The drone ship, of course, I Still Love You, was out there for Booster 1081's 24th landing. What followed this, though, was absolutely breathtaking. What we're looking at here, thanks to Michael Nichols with SpaceX and Starlink, is stunning views from a camera mounted on a Starlink satellite from the Group 1038 launch from a few days before. The process this satellite is in is the orbit raising phase. We can see it cruising over an entire orbit through sunrise and sunset, and that whole time it is slowly separating from the other satellites that are in the stack. This one was part of the stack of 29 satellites in total, and you can see this one coming into view and moving through the frame. How awesome is that? It gives you a neat view of the 2 huge solar panels coming off each side, and we can see across one of those panels from the perspective of the camera on board here. The satellites are stacked like a deck of cards in the payload area, and SpaceX just slowly gets the vehicle spinning a little before deployment so that they just naturally fan out over time. Now we have a bunch of neat action from Blue Origin too. Their Blue Moon Mk1 testing continues to go smoothly. They released these shots here of Endurance going through the radio frequency compatibility testing at Blue Origin's Lunar Plant 1. We're still waiting to hear when this may fly, but I suspect given the issue with the second stage, they'll be more likely, I think, to first launch their initial set of LEO satellites for Amazon. Also, here they were performing a demonstration of their offloader mechanism that will be used for the Viper rover. This is just a Viper test article, of course, but you can see that they're using rotating arms and cables to safely lower the test article, and I can't wait to see this fly on a future Blue Moon Mk1. With that, their third booster, named No It's Necessary, was rolling at Launch Complex 36, and there we also soon had it alongside another booster getting ready to fly, sitting in the integration facility. Dave Limp also recently shared this sweet footage from the Bluebird mission a couple of weeks ago. This is a view from the camera mounted to the New Glenn fairing as it is about to go through re-entry. In this mission, Blue Origin had installed a reaction control system to navigate re-entry and hopefully allow recovery with some sort of parachute system in the future. That's very similar, it seems, to what SpaceX have been doing for years with Falcon 9. The data from this test as it's wobbling around there should give them a lot of information around that design that is needed for the recovery system. These fairings are 7 meters in diameter, of course, compared with Falcon 9's being just a little over 5, so these are quite a lot larger. Watching this fairing half tumble around all floppy like is kind of funny, but yeah, it looks to have made it to splashdown okay. Now, over last weekend, NASA published a bunch of more Artemis II goodies from the mission, and also we may have just gotten our first real clue about what orbit Artemis III will target for the next mission. Recently, of course, Artemis III became a brand new mission that will sit in between the lunar landing mission. That used to be Artemis III, but is now, of course, Artemis IV. Artemis III will launch crew again in Orion with SLS, and it'll test rendezvous and docking capabilities between Orion and the commercial spacecraft needed for the moon landing. We don't know if this will be with SpaceX's human landing system or Blue Origin's, or even both at this point, but NASA has now put out a request for information looking for an alternative communication system for the third Artemis mission. Inside, we see intriguing details about the mission profile still being finalised. Within the ground rules and assumptions area, it states that Orion will be at a 250 nautical mile orbit with a 33-degree inclination. That makes it very much a low Earth orbit mission, and also means that NASA probably won't need the extra push from the interim cryogenic propulsion stage. That probably matters a lot because there's only one of those left. NASA will instead, I suspect, presumably save that for Artemis IV. We also see that they want near continuous coverage with at least 12 megabits per second on Orion's return link. They state a goal of 20 to 50 megabits per second in fact, and they're wanting to support live 4K video during rendezvous and docking. This is a very welcome thing to see because the live feed from the Artemis II mission was quite choppy at times, and we really want to see some big connection improvements. That said, during their historic journey around the far side of the moon, NASA has now released the motherload of images to explore just a few days ago. These are all taken by the crew, I believe, and there's more than 12,000 photos spanning right through the entire mission. I think it gives an awesome perspective on what they experienced during the first return around the moon in over half a century. This time though, all of these photos are taken with modern cameras from inside the spacecraft itself. With all these images to explore, I've got a link to the full gallery in the description because, honestly, it is well worth exploring for yourself. The mission felt like it went by so fast that actually trying to keep on top and digest every image as it was released was close to impossible. Getting the chance to see every image taken by the crew at full quality seems like a real privilege. Some of the images that were taken in loose sequences are even being stitched together into short videos that are revealing details that the stills can't really easily describe. It's all certainly one of the big reasons that I've always loved a good NASA mission. People will be studying these images for years to come. Now, finally, I just wanted to do a quick catch-up on the Soyuz 5 mission that launched on the final day of April. After nearly a decade of work on this brand new rocket, on the Thursday it was smoothly lifting off from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. This maiden flight was planned only as a short suborbital mission, and by all official accounts it went exactly to plan. I kind of wish they had given this a different name, to be honest. Soyuz 5 really has no direct relation at all to the current Soyuz rocket that we see flying. It is instead an entirely new design developed to replace the Zenit rocket and to support future Super Heavy launch systems. If you then mix in the confusion that comes from the Soyuz capsule itself that has been flying since the 1960s, it's kind of difficult to understand why they've just named this new rocket Soyuz 5. Anyway, in terms of capability, it sits around the same sort of class as SpaceX's Falcon 9, but there is an obvious key difference. Soyuz 5 is completely expendable, so they're not even trying to compete in that regard. The second stage has a single vacuum-optimized engine, and we had that clean separation and a stable ascent, which took the mock payload on its planned trajectory before re-entering over the Pacific. Now, as it is right now, it certainly doesn't look like a future Super Heavy vehicle, does it? But they are building up to the capability to strap up to 6 of these Soyuz 5s together in, let's say, this very Kerbal Space Program looking beast. I've got to say, I will love to see that fly for the first time. So that is it for the week, my friends. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit subscribe so we get to keep making them. If you want to continue with more space goodness, check out this video here next. Thanks for watching all this way through. As always, that makes a huge difference. I'll catch you all next weekend.